Barbers of Reddit, what was your oh shit moment? My co-worker at a salon was cutting a girl's hair and found lice. The girl's mom had left her for the trim and she had to wait for her mom in the lobby. We spent the next hour or so frantically cleaning around all of the other clients and stylists to sanitize the whole place top to bottom. When the mom came back and asked her why she didn't have her hair cut, she replied they found out. WHO brings their lice-ridden child to the salon. When my mom worked at Perfect Look, she says the lice was pretty much constant. So many lice kids. But she was told she wasn't legally allowed to say your kid has lice since that's technically a diagnosis. She was supposed to say something like we found something that appears like it may be lice or something like that. Lots of the parents super did not care. My dad let me line myself up once. Fucked up. Decided to cut the whole thing off and go bald. The plus side to being black is that 99% of the time being bald looks fine. I guess I was part of the 1% that looks like a F-King Whopper malt ball. My mom was cutting my hair when I was younger, around 2nd grade. She was only using the razor at one point, without the thing that makes it a certain length, towards the end. A piece of hair fell on my nose and made me sneeze. My head moved. And I ended up with a bald spot. I ended up having to get shaved completely bald to fix it and she refused to give haircuts after that except for one time during COVID. Lol. Mom of a 6-year-old here. I recently started cutting his hair again due to COVID. I am not a hairstylist by any means. Same thing. I would tell him not to move and go to do some cleanup on the edges when suddenly he'd just be like, "What's that over there?" With no warning. His hair came out much shorter than I would have liked. But I guess it could have been worse. The barber my dad took us kids to growing up kept a plastic ear in a big glass jar of water. Told all the little kids, jokingly, that it was the ear of a little boy who wouldn't be still when getting a haircut and he accidentally cut this kid's ear off. Said he was keeping it in formaldehyde to remind us all to be very still. It largely had the desired effect on the younger kids. Edit. Spelling. Not a barber but my cousin worked in a salon when I was a kid and I would hang out there a lot after school. One day she cut a guy's head pretty bad with the clippers. Lots of blood but it wasn't too serious. This led to them dating and eventually getting married. My aunt was a barber in the 70s. One day during her shift a man came in and asked for a trim. During the cut he just offed himself. My aunt got a bit of brain in her mouth. Oh geez. I've been barbering for 7 years and I've got a couple stories. Mostly communication errors. I had a client come in with a super tight haircut, looked like it had just been cut, and asked for a 0 on the sides. I'm not sure what this guy was on, but a 0 is bald to me. So I start my bald line for my fade and he freaks out that it's way too short and I ruined his haircut. Since this never happens to me I got super upset and felt absolutely terrible. I've had clients who text me and ask for an appointment and then I forget to book it. Then they show up and I'm busy and they don't have an appointment. I always comp them because I feel terrible. I used to work in a low-income neighborhood and worked at a black barber shop. I was cutting a kid's hair and since it was so curly you couldn't see his scalp or anything. Started cutting into it and sure enough, he had ringworm. I have hella stories but those are just the ones that come to mind. Kid, 17, weight ha bunch of acne. Like total pizza face and neck, wanted a straight razor shave on the back of his neck and neck. Sliced off a bunch of pimples that bleed for like 10 minutes. Really gross. Dude. As someone who had super fucked pizza face with extra toppings, we know that it's really f-king gross and many of us can't help it. We still need haircuts though. I couldn't go on Accutane, isotretinoin, until I was 18 and living away from my parents because they didn't believe in Western medicine. So frustrating when it's the only thing that can help you. I still have a back and chest full of scars and I will have the deep ones until I die. Like that was a gross day for you. But he has to live with that every single day. If you see that kid again, ask how he is doing. That kid may be dealing with some dark shit. When I suddenly have a heart attack before finishing my client's cut. One of my clients, I'm a tattoo artist, told me the story of that time he was getting tattooed at the guy's home place. And the guy doing his tattoo had a heart attack while tattooing him on the shoulder blade. Called 911. Ambulance and all. Tattoo guy ever woke up. So I got to finish the piece. I'm not a barber, but one time my mum cut my ear with the hair clippers and she freaked out whilst I was sat there wondering what the hell was going on until she shouted, "Get a tissue. We have blood loss XD." Not me. But my mom, who is a hairdresser. Did you know that some hair dye chemicals don't play well together? Turns out the lady had used some sort of home hair dye chemical that basically has tiny bits of metal in it. She didn't mention. My mom goes to dye her hair and puts the professional dye on it. And the hair more or less starts melting as the dye reacts. Her hair was totally ruined. There was no saving it. Only thing to do was to just get the new dye off as fast as possible. She was pretty understanding about the whole situation though. Not a barber, but when I was waiting for my turn to get cut, one of the barbers stopped cutting another guy and ran to the toilet. Guess it was literally an oh shit moment. I got seated with another barber, thankfully. When I was a little kid and hid under the table with a pair of scissors to cut my own bangs, my mom screamed when she saw my work. I remember doing it by feel. Didn't even have a mirror. But I don't remember how it looked. Ironically, a few years later my mom tried to trim my bangs and she did a horrible job. I had to wear a hat for a while. My little sister was over at a friend's when she was 5 or so. I guess friend had access to some sharp grown-up scissors and it was fun to snip your hair. Sis reaches back, grabs a hank of hair right in the middle and saws the whole thing off. Comes home like it's no biggie to be met with, "What did you to your hair?" There was a notch the size of her fist in the back of her hair. Tears, anger, and a trip the hairdresser for a pixie cut, and more tears followed. I was in school still at the time and was cutting this guy's hair. He brought his girlfriend along and she was watching like a hawk over me. I'm halfway through the cut and almost done with the fade when the person next to me has their trolley too close to me, so I go to move it, but I didn't pay attention that my other hand had the clipper still running with no guard on. I made a nasty line through the fade that didn't look intentional at all and was sweating my ass off on how I was gonna fix this. The girlfriend of course points it out and the client is actually super chill about it and has me basically just run a super high 0.5 on the sides and back. 3 years later and to this day I haven't had an incident that bad. So basically I really wanted to meet this local judge who was like a real high flyer in the community. I managed to invite him to my barber shop for a free haircut and one day, out of nowhere, he just turned up for a trim. I was like, oh shit, internally obviously, and murdered him and had my neighbor bake him into a pie. Lol. Covered cutting my husband hair and had an oh shit moment. Just told him to wear a hat in public for a while. Yep. I asked my husband to use a number 9 guard for the top of my head and a number 3 guard for the bottom. He got them mixed up. I got a cool buzz cut. And have officially become the household barber. I was the client in this situation. My hairstylist was doing a usual cut on me and when she was cutting around one of my ears, her scissors caught onto the top inch or so of the cartilage, like the actual top part of the ear. She kept cutting harder and harder trying to get this thick hair not cut. It took me saying ow for her to realize she was cutting my ear. No blood. No cut. Just a really bendy ear. She was distracted talking to my mom. Since I was in like middle school at the time. She never stops saying it every time I get my hair done. Hasn't happened since. Either. Licensed cosmetologist here. During my very first men's haircut when I was in school I accidentally cut this guy's skin tag off. I was absolutely horrified, but he was super nice about it and was genuinely stoked. He only had to pay $5 plus a tip to get it removed. That's the only real oh shit moment that's been my fault that I can think of. I've had plenty. If not too many what the fuck moments though. I've had people shit and piss vomit come in with cum shit mold blood and other fun fluids in their hair, be high or drunk out of their minds, get violent with me, sexually harass, assault me and more in my chair. Please be nice to the person who does your hair. We go through too much to make you all look nice. When I was like 5 I decided to steal the kitchen scissors, give myself a haircut, and then hide the hair in a toy purse. Once I realized what I looked like, I went up to my mom and told her I needed to go get another haircut. You can imagine her reaction. Not a hairdresser. I've had cartilage piercings pulled out by a hairdresser's comb before. It happened at 2 different haircuts, so now I warn hairdressers and take out the earrings. It doesn't hurt, but people kinda panic a little if it happens. One time I was doing clipper over comb to blend a client's haircut, and I sneezed unexpectedly. I made a hole on the side of his head. I turned him around and tried to blend it in the best I could, but the damage was done. Open bracket. Not barber was getting a haircut at a military barber. I wanted generic crew cut 1 inch top, 1/2 inch sides. Barber guy thought I liked my long ass quarantine hair and did 2 inches top, 1 inch side instead, just in case I liked it better longer. I checked cause I trust barber man's opinion on hair a bit. Too long, I look like Hitler. Asked for the original. Anyways, between the 2 inch to 1 inch conversion I heard him mutter Jesus Christ. I break out into a cold sweat, but I can't find anything wrong with the cut after it ended. But seriously my guy, don't mutter the things. Not a barber, but within the first 2 weeks of COVID lockdowns, my boredom mixed with ad impulse brought me to think shaving my whole head was a good idea. I also convinced my brother to do it with me, cause why not? For him. Okay. For me. Big mistake. Firstly, I do not have the best hairline, which I underestimated because once the top was gone that HT was pulling graph functions on my forehead. Fucking Y equals UF get up headers. I should also mention I am very skinny. So mix the shaved head with that and I look like I was on chemo. In conclusion, good learning experience, but never again. One time when I was a kid, my mum walked into a barber's with me and asked the barber to give me a muffet, long sides and fringe, shaved back, bald cap with a long tuft in the middle. Barber's jaw dropped and she just sort of stood there trying to process WTF had just happened. Not a professional, but I have 2 stories that somewhat relate to each other. When I was in high school, my mom would try to save some money by cutting my hair herself. When she was about to finish, she saw a part she needed to fix and grabbed the clippers, forgetting she already took off the guard, and gave me a bald spot at my hairline at the top of my forehead. She was traumatic. Fast forward 9 years to about 5 months ago. COVID is in full swing. People can't really get haircuts from barbers. A friend of mine needed a haircut, and she was willing to trust me. Basically all she wanted was the sides to be cut at a 3. I told her my incident with my mom cutting my hair, and that I would never let that happen to her. Then I noticed the guard on the counter and I started crying. I'm glad I didn't read what everyone is saying they wish they'd read. I always scroll to the middle of a thread and then I read. Thanks guys. Now I'm leaving. I went to a barbershop where the barber spoke very little English and somehow there was some sort of communication error between us and he ended up shaving my sideburns up to the top of my ear. Ugh. I used to love my Kurdish barber for this reason. Any whiskers or hair on my cheeks or sides by the ear would get straight razored into oblivion as part of the service. This was a UACUT 5+ tip, simple, short, back and sides. Those guys always went the extra mile though. Made me feel $1,000,000. Barber here. I'm pretty experienced and a successful barber with my own place, but I definitely made some mistakes along the way. This story still makes me die inside a little. When I was training, maybe a few months in, so I had a bit of confidence. Enough for me to not realize I still didn't know what I was doing. I was cutting this guy's hair and I got to his fringe. He wanted it really short and I was standing in front of him cutting along his forehead whilst chatting away. I took my scissors away to comb his hair, but flicked them, around my fingers and they swung round and hit the guy right in the f-king iris. I froze. He froze. Eventually I asked, did I just hit you in the eye by the way? He said, I think so. trying to act like it wasn't sore for some reason. It eventually blew up in the shop once his shock wore off and someone else got him out the door. Found out a month later his wife was a nurse and she used some kind of eye drop and his eye was only scratched. Thank God, because I thought I blinded him. I gave him a free haircut next time. Just the one though. My mum used to be a hairdresser back before she had kids. And her co-worker told her about a client she had once that had really matted and unkept dreadlocks. When she started getting through and chopping the guy's hair, as he requested, she found a redback spider, Black Widow, just sitting in a part of his hair. When my brother got his first haircut in a barber shop, he of course was a bit nervous as he never had his hair cut before. My mom assured him that it would be okay and that it wasn't painful. The barber accidentally cut off my brother's earlobe. So that was a real oh shit moment for all parties, I think. Super late to the party. Ex-hairdresser. I still gag when I think about the time I cut someone's massive mole off of their ear. Ears bleed a lot. I was done the whole haircut and was cleaning up the edges and I felt the resistance in my scissors during the cut. It was absolutely brutal. I've never felt so awful in my entire life. If you're reading this, I'm still sorry. 10 years later. My mother is a barber. She was tasked with cutting my husband's hair for our wedding. The guard comb thing that goes on electric razor popped off while she was enthusiastically talking to me. She accidentally buzzed a 0 on the back of his head. A 0 is the shortest you can cut the hair without it being bald, I believe. We never told him and no pictures were taken of the back of his head. If I can help it, I'll be taking this to my grave. If not, he'll forgive me, but I'll feel bad still. Hairdresser of 12 years. I once was combing a young girl's hair that had just got her cartilage pierced a few days prior. Sure enough, I snag it with the comb and rip the barbel straight through her ear. I went physically weak at the knees and cried a bit. It bled a ton. But she was, and is, the kindest client I've ever had. She refused to not pay me. And never told any of her family. Whom are my clients as well. What happened? Still cringe at this moment to this day. I went to the man shop for a cut and a shave. The girl cut my upper lip open and it bled everywhere and took literally hours to stop fully with direct pressure. Didn't even get an oops sorry out of them. I'm not a barber, but my mother is a hairdresser. And when I was 15 I attempted to cut my own hair using her salon scissors. Nearly a decade later I still have a long scar on my neck from where I came close to slicing open my own jugular instead of my very unfortunate mullet. A hairdresser I know related the story of doing a blue rinse set woman hair. While she was pulling the hair back, she saw this obscenely large pinky white area opening up before her eyes. The woman's recent facelift glue line had given away. The client was completely oblivious. Much consternation from the staff followed, though handled well enough to keep the customer. Not something I would ever want to face. Not me, but my mom. She's been doing hair for 40+ years and last Friday she had a new customer who was so unhappy with how her hair turned out. She called out of work that day while still in the chair. My mom gave up her Saturday off to fix it. But the lady is coming back in 2 weeks. So we'll see if that happens again. In the meantime, my mom's stressing that this lady truly hated her hair that much. And it's first time anything like this has ever happened to her. My mom has a doodle that requires regular trims. One day she tells me the groomer is incompetent. Mom goes on to say that she took it into her own hands to repair the hideous chop job her baby was sporting. She starts to laugh. She can barely talk, she is laughing so hard as she says, "I think I owe the groomer an apology." She presents a fluff baby and it is sporting a dozen bald patches, a lopsided mustache, and a rat tail.